Hi there. I am really grateful to be here today and at the invitation of one of my dear colleagues and friends, Peter Whitehouse. I'm also very lucky to have another of my dissertation committee members here. Both were on my dissertation, Phil Kola. And so this is a fun thing for me. What I'd like to do right now is sort of zoom us out. We've been talking today about some specific technologies and their role in supporting people as they age and with various aspects of care. We're going to look at sort of the wider ecosystem, as Dr. Pat called it, and really look at some of the things that are going to impact how some of these technologies evolve, the barriers and challenges. And just to give you a little context, I am a researcher. My PhD looked at how people used social technologies to do things like establish connection and relationships with other people around the world and to create a collective social identity. But I also study things like wonder and how we establish relationships from human to human. I am a certified strategic foresight practitioner, which is a fancy way of saying somebody who plays with the future through imagination, but also research methods that we use. And then I happen to have a background in socio-technical systems and human factors design. I worked in the early days in technology transformation. So during the Obama administration, some of you mentioned EHRs. I worked on a federal pilot that was about adopting technologies in the healthcare context. And so looking at how do we design work to accommodate our humans in the workplace while adapting to and working with technologies. So a lot of different things, a lot of technology. But what I really want to do today is talk about something called strategic foresight that I mentioned. And what it is, it's an approach to anticipating and shaping the future. This should actually say futures. There is not one future. There are all sorts of possibilities. Things collide and intersect and change. And that's why we say shaping. There are possibilities for us to intervene, to make decisions, and to help shape what happens next. We've maybe heard of strategic planning. Oftentimes that involves looking to the past and sort of projecting where that's going to go next. I'm talking about imagination and thinking about what's happening and what could happen as a result of those things. So we're looking deeper into the future rather than simply relying on what's happened in the past and sort of hoping it continues along a certain trend. And it also involves looking for things out there. What are the things that are happening that you see that are signals of change? Something might be different. You know, your grandkids might tell you about this new thing, or you hear a new term and you're like, what the heck is that? It might be a signal that they're using this new technology that someday finds its way into your care, right? So there are little things that lead to bigger things. Generative AI, same thing. All these people on the fringes, and now suddenly it could be a reminiscence therapy strategy. Some of the key elements, as I mentioned, are the signals. What are we hearing in the periphery? These are new things that are popping up. Trends are the things that start to build steam. Okay, and we're going to focus on those a little bit today, but it's really what are the patterns that we're starting to see much more strongly, things that are shifting in our environments that we can all sort of recognize. We can then use these trends to come up with stories. What are the stories of the future where these things are involved? How might they impact us moving forward? And we can sort of imagine and anticipate. And then from those stories, we can think about what are the effects? What are the potential consequences? So let's say everybody bought an electric car. What might be the impact in the world? Right? We might not have as much of a reliance on fossil fuels, maybe in a different way. We might maybe not use our cars as much. We might need refueling stations, right? So there are all sorts of things that we can imagine as a result of these stories. So I give all of that just to sort of say, this is how we play with the future. And we're going to focus a little bit on trends for a moment, just in the context of what we've been talking about today. A tool I like to use is STEEP. So one of the ways we can look at trends is to say, what are the social things happening in the world? The cultural, demographic, lifestyle, and societal conditions. What are those things that are happening? What people wear, what technology they use, how they interact with each other through that technology. Those are the societal things. Demographic shifts, we see a lot of those. Technological trends, we've been focused on that a lot today, right? What are the things that are emerging that are really interesting that we can see moving forward? AI is a big one, robotics is a big one. So that's another key component. Then we have sort of economic trends. Where are we headed with buying power, with industry changes? What is the labor market telling us? What are some disruptions that are occurring? What fiscal policies exist? These are other trends that can influence whether something moves forward or gets challenged. We also want to consider environmental factors, right? So some of the things we've talked about today may have environmental implications, the energy use associated with them. And then political, and these are sort of the broad conditions that exist. How are we looking at attitudes, policies, the regulations, all of the legal components that are steering something? So we want to kind of look at this broader environment. And let me just give you a few examples. So on the social lens, we can look at demographics, and what the demographics are telling us right now is that by 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 or older, and by the end of the century, the US population will not only be declining without substantial immigration, but older adults will outnumber children. So all of a sudden we can say, if we have a very large population of older adults and not enough young people to care for them, what pressures might that place on the care system? So we can start to ask questions about this. From an environmental standpoint, it's projected that the AI industry could use as much energy as the Netherlands by 2027, okay? There were 8,000 data centers 4 years ago. There are now 12,000. Those new 4,000 are pretty much dedicated or purpose-built for AI. The healthcare sector uses a large percentage of our energy, and it's estimated that it will be a significant contributor to these numbers. AI is being built into many of the diagnostic technologies, the note-taking technologies. If you go to your doctor and they say, do you mind if we have an AI assistant to help with this? So those technologies are going to be very heavily embedded in the way we deliver care. One of the other challenges, so if we look at economically, we see a decline in the number of caregivers, whether they're physicians, nurses, frontline caregivers in long-term care facilities, nursing facilities. So there is a decline in the number, and there are anticipated shortages of providers, right? So when we talk about telehealth, that's maybe an enabler of telehealth and a reason why we might want to be able to have various options for people to deliver care throughout a different time cycle, right? Can we fix America's dementia care crisis? So we also know that there's an increase coming, and it's growing. It will continue to grow, but age is the greatest risk factor for this disease. So of course, if we have a larger aging population, we're going to see greater instance of Alzheimer's and dementia. And we have to think about this also from, let's say, funding and policy perspectives. What is the government doing? What are we doing from a community standpoint or a larger system standpoint to ensure that we're able to navigate the various aspects of the care system? Are we providing education? Are we providing sufficient support for these kinds of technologies and the types of assistance that's going to be needed to care for our aging population? And so this boils down to research funding, clinical education, incentive to even go to school. We have sort of an educational cliff right now as well. And so the big question I have is, what if? What if these trends continue, right? Knowing what you know about your work, your personal experience, and your navigation of this larger care system, how might these technologies that we've been talking about roll out? What might be the challenges? What might be the enablers, right? And so if we take these and sort of play with a story, what I'm going to share with you, I worked with AI this morning or last night and said, okay, let's kind of combine these. Let's combine the technologies we've been talking about as well as some of these trends that we can see visible in society right now. What might two different futures be like? And there are many possible futures, but the assumptions embedded here are, let's say we wait and we let crisis drive our action. So we're in reaction mode. In the other side, we see, gosh, we can anticipate what might happen based on the trends that are happening in the world. Let's be responsive. Let's be proactive and have conversations about how the different parts of the care system can coordinate and work effectively to create a really positive response to some of these challenges we're facing. And so we've heard today conversation about, do we build technologies that substitute for humans? No, everybody here has pretty much resolutely said we do not want that to happen. We want to augment capacity. We want to provide people with support so that they can engage in the most valuable human-to-human care that we want. With the workforce, we can continue to devalue them and ignore the shortages, or we can look at how we elevate, train, make decisions involving their voices, right? Ensure that those individuals feel valued and want to come into the professions that are going to be needed. From a robotics standpoint, again, talking about replacement, if we have shortages versus how do we free humans up to do the kind of relational work or other types of care work that are most valued and felt by the residents, by the individuals in our care. One of the things we see with a lot of AI apps right now is that there are incredible technologies. Just in the last couple of weeks, Claude AI, which was mentioned earlier, rolled out something called Claude Code. I have watched as people have, in the space of 2 days, learned how to program and design applications that they can roll out and deliver to the market. So one of the things we might see, and I'm using Memory AI as an example, right? People are using these very affordable technologies to develop applications that are pushed out into the market. They're not necessarily evidence-based. The people who are developing them do not necessarily have the skills to develop them. They're relying on the AI to help them through this. And so we might end up with an explosion of technology that is not well vetted, that is not evidence-based. So just a question or a comment here. Telehealth, I just use this as an example. What if telehealth were the only option? What if we say we're no longer offering in-person care except to the most extreme cases of need? We cut appointments down, and there's some continuity loss. Extreme example. Alternative might be we have community navigators who help people access whatever type of appointment they need, right? We're able to improve accessibility and make sure that people have access to the care that they need it when they need it for the right purpose, right? Caregiver apps, again, fragmented. And we saw this with EHRs. In the start of the electronic health records implementation process, there were hundreds of EHR companies. Within about 5 years, they were consolidated down to about 30 core systems. And now we see these very large enterprise systems like I'm sure a lot of you, if you're with any of the major health systems here, you know you access the same tool, regardless of which health system you're in, because there's interoperability now, that you can access data from different locations. So we've sort of really consolidated, but that required a great deal of coordination, and I think a lot of conversations, but also money. So I won't go through all of this, but I think the point is sometimes these crises cause us to do things in reaction and say, how do we quickly fix this problem? And we don't always think about the long-term implications, like robot neglect, right? Somebody mentioned, what if we have cases of abuse? There are all sorts of things we haven't yet anticipated, but using a tool like Foresight, where we think about possibilities that could emerge from these trends, and we engage in some imaginative storytelling about what could happen, we start to think about what can we do to shape the future we most desire. What ethical stance do we need to take? What design principles do we want to use? And how do we want to collaborate with each other to make this future happen? So some of the questions you can ask, whatever your role, whatever your desire for the future, I think it's really important to think about what you value, whether it's personally, with the role that you occupy in your work, with the people that you collaborate with. What do you value and want to maintain in the process of designing something, in the process of adopting a new technology? What signals might tell us that the weather is shifting and we need to adapt, right? We might look at adoption rates of an application, caregiver app downloads, regulatorily, I cannot say that word today. It's end of day. Regulatory pilot programs, right? So we're seeing people invest money, seeing them adopt new technologies, and we're taking those as signs that things are shifting and that more attention is being paid to certain things. And so we might want to be aware of that. It's always good to consider what trends will impact one's work. And there are a lot of what I'll call narratives out there about the role AI, for example, might play in the workforce, what jobs it might, or how it might affect work and jobs. We also have to look at the bigger picture. And so what trends or what things do you want to focus in on that are most relevant to you that can help you kind of see where things might go? It's also interesting to explore what other opportunities emerge from that. Not everything is going to be a challenge. It might appear that way at first, but it might also open the door for greater use of a technology or for reconnection with our humanity, right? People get overloaded with the technology and say, oof, how do we foster that human-to-human connection? And then what are the trade-offs we might need to make to either engage in a new technology or ensure that we do maintain the things that we most value? And then really it's about what actions then can we take to help shape where we want to go. If things are not going the direction we want, what can we do in response? How do we adapt? So these are things that I encourage you to think about to help you understand what's happening in the world around you, not just within your local domain, but the things that could impact you, and what you can do to help move things in a direction that you prefer. One of the things I woke up with this morning was also, we might want to think about care in a broader sense. So we've already talked briefly today about what are some of the design principles that innovators or developers might want to use. I think care as a system design principle is a really important thing to consider. So yes, we can include that as part of our design process, right? How do we design or adopt the right tool for a particular care need, configuration, right? Are we using robots and humans? What is that relationship? What constraints are we navigating, right? With the robot, is it carpet? So what are those things that we might need? And then the context. We heard about power outages today, right? Taking all of those things, that's a care approach. We care about the people who are ultimately impacted and who are going to be using these tools. We also want to know about the various voices. We want people to have voice. Can they speak to their own experience as part of that design process? And we started off today hearing about how people interacted with a robot, how they got to share their input. Many of you got to share your input about that experience and what would improve it, right? So we don't want to lose those voices. I think the relational piece is really important. Anytime we bring in new technology, it changes the way we relate to each other. And so being mindful of how a technology can enable new ways of connecting, transform them, and maybe even close them down. So we want to be mindful of that. Presence. We talked also about haptic technologies that are emerging, like substitutes for hugs, for example, or touch. But what does physical presence enable? The empathy, the synchronous time of being with a person, even if in silence, the embodied interactions with people. Where are those preferable or irreplaceable, right? And considering that and what we're willing to mediate or alter as a result of technology. Agency and dignity, I think, are critical components. How do these technologies enable people to preserve or extend their agency and dignity as they age, as capacities dwindle, but also the people caring for them, right? Does the technology preserve their dignity? We may end up having questions about salary, about value in the workplace, right? And then finally, interdependence. This is about the larger ecosystem. What are the economic, material, policy, and social conditions that make care work sustainable? What are we asking technology to solve that might also require some systemic changes? And what does the whole web of care need in order to flourish? And so these are higher level questions that involve bigger conversations, but I think they're important to consider. So that's what I have for you today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm honored to be here today, so thank you.
All right, I'm going to be the beneficent dictator today because we are running a little short on time. I'm going to head over to Dr. Peter Whitehouse to wrap things up. Boy, I'm glad it's you and not me because we got a lot to cover. Thank you so much, Stormy.
Thank you.
So I have only two jobs. One is to express gratitude, and the other is to tell you a story. I'll tell you a couple of stories. One is that Stormy didn't tell you that her thesis committee on social media studied women motorcycle gangs, and that our collaborative project on creating AI-generated images is about a mutual interest in dragons. In fact, we were on a program just a couple days ago where she gave me a dragon, and we were talking about AI and the future and nature, and that will foreshadow my story. But gratitude first and then story. Well, really, gratitude for me is expressed in the form of story. This today has been reminiscence therapy. I got to meet nursing school colleagues, Center for Aging and Health colleagues, Judson colleagues, Benjamin Rose colleagues, former colleagues in the university. And so we've heard about the power of reminiscence, and I appreciate you all sharing your stories with me and catching up. I think the gratitude is to all those organizations that I just mentioned, all the participants in our research, all the residents from the various facilities at Judson, all the people online from around the world. And I think at this point, we should just give a collective clap to us all. So I was supposed to I was on the planning committee. I think I was the second person on the planning committee, and probably there were only two. No? So if I thank the planning committee and criticize it, I guess I'm bearing all the responsibility. I thank them for inviting Stormy, which I did, because I think it's important that we think about the future, and that will relate to my story. What I don't thank them is putting me right before lunch and right before a sunny afternoon in Cleveland. So I won't speak as long as perhaps I thought. Although I thought maybe at the end although this is dangerous because some people can go on and on. If anybody wants to add to any reflective comments on the day-to-day, I'd be happy to include that in my time limit. This story. How many of you know who Al Gore is? How many of you know that he didn't really invent the internet, but his legislation created the internet in a political way through some of the legislation he passed? So I guess I just told you the answer, didn't I? In many ways, he was credited by the people that developed the technologies, the TCP/IP protocols or whatever they are, with being the politician who really facilitated the development of the internet. So I think we can credit Al Gore. How many of you know what the Cleveland Freenet was? All right, Cindy, give her the prize. Do you know that Cleveland had the first free public access internet service in the world? That was a question. Anybody know that? Nancy, all right. Nancy knew that. How many of you know what a National Information Infrastructure Award was? Okay, by the way, I'm getting to questions where I expect nobody who's telling the truth to raise their hands. Although I could be raising my hand because I'm asking the questions. So Al Gore put together a program between 1995 and 1999 where he gave awards to communities that were developing innovative uses of the internet particularly. This was before the World Wide Web, before we could do all this kind of stuff you heard about before. Okay, do any of you know that Cleveland won one of the first National Information Infrastructure Awards? We did. It's not only Superman and traffic lights and intergenerational schools. Cleveland was on the forefront, just as we were with the validation therapy that I mentioned earlier that was developed at Menora Park. And do you know what we won for? A caregiver support group online in 1995. And that was Kathleen Smith and a whole bunch of other people who developed that project. So we've been in the technology space. By the way, this is for you online, particularly around the world. Cleveland has been innovative. And look at what you heard today from Benjamin Rose and Judson and the Center for Aging and Health about what they're doing. This is our story, and it's a story we can build on. So Al Gore is still alive with us. But later in his career, he developed the Climate Reality Project. This is teaching people around the country about the challenges that we're facing. And I use the word challenges because we've talked about a number of challenges of aging. We've talked about rethinking aging. And I think all of us that are getting older, and not everybody will have that opportunity, but those that are chronologically advanced have the opportunity to contribute to society, as well as to use the technology to help themselves deal with dementia or whatever we're talking about. And so I think that one of the greatest challenges that we are facing is our legacy as a generation of elders for other people that we hope will become older, and that is kids. And that is the intergenerational conversation. That is the life course perspective that I want to leave you with for the future. That we are members of society who, even if we have cognitive challenges, can continue to contribute. Because it is going to be, in my opinion, the climate crisis and the changes in the environment that we have to meet not only as individuals, but collectively. The conference that Stormy and I were involved was about academics and nature, and you heard from Stormy some of the statistics. I would not claim that Ohio is on the forefront of much to do with this, except for the fact that we have far too many data centers, and even the rural communities are beginning to imagine that this has been something that we shouldn't be doing. We just don't think. In America, we think progress is always going forward. We think innovation is always good. But I think we need to think deeply about who we are as human beings. And I think getting older, and I think working with robots and technologies allows us that opportunity. So the biggest challenge, I think, is to plan for our ancestorhood, to think what it is we're going to be remembered for. And I'm looking at Nancy King Smith just because I know of all her work in the environment, and I don't want to let that go unacknowledged. So think about the challenges of aging, but think about them not only in your own lives, not only in your own communities, but in relationship to the planet we live on. And that's my last message. Thank you. So is it okay just to, because there are so many things that have happened today, it would be great to have a few reflections since we are scheduled to go to 3:30. And what Kylie and I will promise to do is give you at least 1 minute and possibly longer. Anybody else got some reflections? What have you learned about the past and the future? Oh, and by the way, I will say, Kylie, you're right. I checked with Diane and Carol. I am the oldest member of the University Center for Aging and Health president. So that's why the planning committee told me I could have the last word.
Well, that, and I just want to share something you shared with me the other day. I said, oh, Dr. White, or actually I said, Peter, you insist I call you Peter. It's very difficult. And so you said, I said, thank you for rolling up your sleeves. You said, well, I've gotten experience. I just wear short sleeves now. So thank you for always bringing that attitude.
Anybody got any final words? And you don't have to have them. Just take them away with you. But anybody want to? Diana, I don't want to pick on you, but as the last director of the University Center for Aging and Health, do you have anything to offer? And I won't pick on anybody else. I'm only picking on Diana because she is why we're here too.
Thank you, Peter, I think. I think what you had to say is really important, that, we really need to look at what all of us can contribute to the future and kind of dream about what that future should be looking like. The good, bad, and the ugly, and how we might shape it in a certain way and use the talents that we have. And part of our talent, too, is to be reaching back and bringing along the other generations to be part of this. So, thank you.
Love that intergenerational message. And by the way, Kylie, why don't we let you have the last word, since you have been doing such a wonderful job hosting us today with the microphones.
Let me make sure there's nobody else. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. So I won't make you crane your necks. It has been an absolute joy planning this conference with really some amazing people. It's one of those things where, yes, it's part of your job, but we have so many good friends, as Peter alluded to, who you can call up and say, oh my gosh, can we showcase your work because what you're doing is so cool. I got to meet Phil, Dr. Cola. We've become closer, and I've gotten a chance to learn about his work. He's contributed to some certain things I've done. Janet, you were going to get a call from me anyway, so we were going to be friends one way or another. It was great to meet you, Tracy, and everyone else, and Nancy and Susan. So I could go on and on thanking people, and I know I'm going to forget somebody if I do by mistake. So I just want to thank you. One of the things that we're trying to do with the University Center on Aging and Health is to really help to be a service to the community. We are a very service-oriented center, and so hopefully we can do things like Stormy, what you say about your own biography, where you help organizations navigate uncertainty. We want to help older adults, caregivers, organizations serving the community, healthcare providers to navigate what aging looks like, since we know aging is something that's changing. It's changing because of technology. It could be changing because of climate change. I might be planting ideas for future conferences here. But thank you, everybody, for taking the time. I do have a couple of logistical things. I'm sorry I have to be that person. I'm going to change mics real quick. So, oh, wrong one. You know what? Here we are. Make this a little bigger. I always enjoy at technology conferences when people make mistakes, it makes me feel a little bit better. Google actually visited CWU recently because we're having a big AI initiative, and they really struggled. And I was like, yes, it's not just me. Okay, there we are. So this is, if you are receiving CE credits, please fill out this evaluation so we can get that certificate to you. We'll also be sending it by email as well as a general evaluation. So please give us feedback. We want ideas for future conferences, how to make things better. Again, we want to be a service to you. We'll also be sending some materials to you in a digital file. I want to highlight a couple of those materials, so please check them out. One, we do have the article to the Harmony Project that was alluded to earlier that we'll be uploading that is open access. We have information from CWRU. The Siegel Center for Lifelong Learning has some great programming. I think Dr. Whitehouse, you're featured there. I think Adam Przinski from our center is there. Some really good things to check out. I want to plug Dr. Mary Delansky. She couldn't make it today in person, but she leads our Age-Friendly initiative, some really great work that's going on nationally. She's sharing some tools on how to make an age-friendly healthcare system and an advocacy tool for patients and caregivers. So I do want to highlight some of those tools. And I honestly think I could go on and on, but it's been a long day. I hope you have a really great afternoon, and thank you for coming.